Welcome back to the Charles River Museum of Industry and Innovation. I'm David Shein with a video tour of my uP-CYCLE Time exhibit. In the last two videos, I showed you my wall-mounted clocks made from recycled bicycle and automobile parts. Now I want to highlight my freestanding clocks and sculptures. When I went to the bicycle store to ask for their used discard parts, I wasn't sure what kind of reception I'd get. So my initial trip was made on a Saturday morning when hopefully the store would be quiet, and if they looked at me like I was a lunatic and kicked me out of the store, there wouldn't be too many other customers in there. Turns out they were more than receptive and happy to give their discards to me for a second life here at uP-CYCLE Time. The other message I wanted to convey to the viewers is the purpose of the messaging behind uP-CYCLE, which is that we do live in a throwaway society. And just to think about, perhaps you're not going to recycle bicycle gears or automobile gauges, but what during our daily lives can we recycle? Where can we reduce packaging and waste, using reusable grocery bags, etc.? I think those are all important things for us to think about from a societal perspective. Back to the parts that I've harvested from various bike shops. In addition to collecting gears, I also collected various upright parts, such as, in this case, the seat post. And the seat post wasn't as amenable to hanging on the wall as it was to creating a freestanding sculpture. And so initially I attached the clock face created with the gears. I hung the chain, and on the bottom you can see in the distance there is actually a temperature gauge on the bottom piece here. So it gives you additional functionality to both tell time as well as temperature. I mounted it on this base and found it was fairly lonely in terms of the clock. And so I took a rear gear cluster and separated it, took the gears and mounted them here. And I call that the gear garden. And this piece is named Time Post and the Gear Garden. It may be tough to see it in the distance, but the second hand is actually a cut down rear cog that I trimmed to decrease the weight and incorporate more of the motion of the gears into the momentum and the motion of the clock. In addition to the seat post, I found some other interesting parts along the way, and let's move down here and highlight this one. So this is a racing handlebar, which I also repurposed into the base of a clock. I call this one Race Against Time. Every time I look at these racing handlebars, I just envision either myself or perhaps a real bike racer bent forward, going as fast as they possibly can downhill. And just gives you a sense of motion to which I've mounted the clock in the center by cutting a small hole in the handlebar and calling it, again, Race Against Time. I had another racing handlebar, which I decided to orient in a completely different direction and mount the clock in the center of it, and I call this one Time Stands Up. I do not have a second hand on this clock. I think the second hand would in some way detract from looking at the sculpture, just the tall upright nature and the clock positioned perfectly in the center of the handlebar. After creating a range of clocks, I came up with the notion of actually creating sculpture simply for the purpose of sculpture without the clock behind the sculpture. And let me set the camera here, and you can see here, I call this Tower. I created the series of tower sculptures, and there are several of them. At first by simply taking apart the rear gear set, using clamps and other devices to organize them in what I thought would be a visually pleasing design, and then using my favorite tool in the workshop, which is a grinder, to make the appropriate holes and mount them in this random tower-like structure. Now we are here at the visitor desk at the museum to highlight this piece, which is called Movement in 8 Major. The number 8 reflects the 8 gears that are incorporated in the structure of this piece, and the name Movement is sort of reflective of musical movements. And my grandmother, who was a piano teacher and gave me a lot of the inspiration along with her husband, my grandfather, who was an artist, Eva and Frank, for I think my ability to be an artist. And so this piece is motorized, and there's actually a motor here behind this section that turns this lower wheel, which then turns the upper wheel. And right now it is moving in the same direction as the second hand for the clock, but it does have the option as well to turn in the opposite direction. And this is sitting here at the museum front desk, and hopefully will be here permanently for all viewers to see. While we're at the front desk, I also just wanted to highlight two other whimsical pieces I created with bicycle gears. Let's come around here. The first one is the bicycle gear pen holder, and let's find it right there. And this actually is created from the gears of a single rear cog, and the hole in the center will nicely accommodate a pen or perhaps several of them. And then taking additional bike gears, of which I have quite a few in my studio, I was actually able to create a business card holder, which is purposed here at the museum for Bob's business cards. So I wanted to thank you for joining me today. And again, my best wishes to everyone. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please give us feedback at the museum if you have any feedback, or certainly if you have any questions. Hopefully in due time, we'll be open again and you can come see the exhibit in person.